Welcome to episode 6 of the Unfortunate Diehards podcast. We have officially launched our Apple podcasts, by the way. Woo, round of applause. Yes, thank you. So you guys can check it out on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube now. So we are now on all the biggest platforms, which is very, very exciting. I'll give a rundown and then we'll introduce everybody. So we're going to talk about some extensions today, such as Big Jimmy Stu, 8-year deal, $8.35 million a year. I won't give my opinion yet. And then
we can
we're
all
going to
tell
talk
how you feel about that.
we're going to talk about the new captain for the Montreal Canadiens, and then we'll talk about Evan again because he's our favorite player. Then later on in the episode, we're going to have our second interview of our podcast. So Ross Levitan of the Locked On Senators podcast will be joining us in a little bit. We'll be talking about what we think the Sens are going to be doing this upcoming season, what they did this past off season, and how we got into the business of podcasting and broadcasting in general. Then we're going to talk about who we think makes the playoffs in the Atlantic Division and how that all shakes out. And then we'll talk about a head-to-head. So, say hello, Omar.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
2 Omars. Wow.
My name is Sufyan Jawed. I'm a Caps fan.
I feel like you do this every episode. You introduce
Every
yourself with
single episode.
hi, guys. And then later on, you're like, I can't believe.
It always starts with, hello, I'm a Caps fan. And then it goes to...
I just like getting into it, you know? So let's get into it.
Alrighty. So, first order of business, like I said. Jimmy Stu, Tim Stutzle, 3rd overall pick in the 2020 NHL entry draft. Signed an 8-year extension with the Ottawa Senators at an average annual value of $8.35 million a year. So
we're going to start with you.
The past 2 seasons,
yes,
he played 53 games, had 29 points, which was 12 goals, 17 assists. And then this past season had played 79 games, 22 goals, 36 assists, and 58 points in total. So he actually did have, fun fact, this is what every Sens fan loves to talk about, in his final 35 games, had 35 points. He was on an absolute tear, especially after being moved to center. People were often comparing this contract to the Jack Hughes contract, and Tim Stutzle had a slightly better point-per-game average in his second season. I think they are similar players, like both skill centers. I love the contract, honestly, like especially with the cap going up in a couple years, and if he's playing with people like Giroux or Batherson or DeBrincat, I feel like he's going to have a career year and maybe would have even wanted 9 or more, especially he's like hovering around point per game this year. So for me personally, loving the contract, and I'd love to hear what you guys think.
Me first?
Sure.
It's a terrible contract.
Yeah, you have a bunch of contracts you love on your team.
It's hard to beat the John Tavares contract. Okay, contract-wise. We knew this was coming, didn't we?
I didn't know, because they had not talked about an extension or even knew there were discussions. So I didn't know if it was going to get done now because he just wanted it out of the way, or if they were going to play hardball and wait until see how this upcoming season went. So
we got Nylander at $6.9 million.
That was more of a Toronto thing. He would have got way more anywhere else.
You think so?
He would, like, even with the stats that he had at that point, even as like a 65-point player or whatever it was, he would have got like $8 million.
Yeah, probably actually. True.
Because that's what they were going for at that point.
Yeah, but the added benefit of Stutzle at $8 million. No, $8 million. It was $8.3. 8.3 million for 8 years. The added benefit at that price point is that potentially he's gonna be a center, and if he can really blossom into being a center, then that's something. At $8 million, I don't know what is like. I'm trying to think what I think his height is in terms of points. Like, what is his max gonna be?
Well, something I was gonna say that you were just talking about was if he's going to stay center, and I think he will, because I was watching a video on like clips and stuff of him, and because he's a really good skater and loves to kind of control the play, he excels at center, like whether it's breaking the puck out or kind of he loves doing the little like loop backs, whether that's in the offensive or defensive zone, and I think he enjoys kind of being able to do that, kind of have more free reign with what he can do. Whereas a winger, I think he was fine, but wasn't necessarily wasn't, how would I word it, like it didn't match well with his skill set completely, and I think he's shown that he has like the tools to be a better defensive player. I think he will continue to get better defensively as he gets older and stronger. And yeah, I think his point height, I think, does mildly depend on if he does play with good players for the next however many years. But I could see him having like in the 90s at some point.
I don't know if full line mates thing. I think he's a 90-point player without even guys on his lines. Like, I think that's a little overused in like projecting players with and how they develop and stuff. Like, I don't really like Jack Hughes would have been at least a 90-point player last year with a really good player in Bratt, and then like someone else on the wing that no one really cares about. Like, I think that's gonna happen regardless of who he plays with. The thing with this contract, so I don't know. Like, there's a lot of there's two really big trends in the NHL right now, and it seems like guys are getting paid at 30, and they're getting lower term or more term for less money. And the same thing is kind of happening when guys are coming out of their ELCs, where they're getting 8-year deals for what people think is going to be a less AAV for them in a few years. So I don't doubt his skill. He still has to prove it, and the face-offs and have to be better. And
I mean, yeah, but the face-offs will.
But that'll develop. And defensive side of the game for center is important, but I think right now he needs to like just develop, like he continue developing the offensive side of his game as well. Because even the things that Sens fans love to talk about with the however many points in the last however many games, it was a lot of power play points and not very many even strength. I think over half of them were on the power play, and that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying, like, if that needs to progress, then he needs to be better on even strength. And I know you're going to bring the line mate thing again, but I'm saying he needs to continue developing on that side as well. And I think, as you said, the thing with him being a center is, you said it perfectly, where his skills are best used at center, because players that like to gather speed and stuff like that, it's way harder to do that as a winger, and it usually puts them at a disadvantage if they do come deeper into the zone. So guys like McDavid and Hughes and all those guys they're always the ones that are looping back and carrying the puck up the ice or whatever. His point height, I honestly think he could be a 100-point player, and I wouldn't doubt that. I don't think it's going to happen next year.
I would be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I think next year my point range for him is anywhere between...
Yeah, I was going to say, if you were a betting app and you had to give an over-under of his points this upcoming season, where would you put it at?
I put it at like 68.
Over-under 68.5.
Yeah, I think that's safe. Like, I think that's like, if you're kind of just seeing how his points have progressed over the year, and like the team around him as a whole getting better, not just his line mates, and then like you factor in how good their power play was in the second half. I think that all adds to increased point totals. So I could see at least 68, and I would probably go over on that.
I would go the over on that as well.
I could see a lot of like 70s in the Ottawa top six.
I don't know. I just feel like
Kachuk.
I feel
he almost had 70 last year.
One off, man. One off. Kachuk is one off. No.
You guys.
Over under Kachuk 42.
Yeah.
Goals?
34 points. No. Honestly, for me, it's the not like I in my head can't downplay the amount the Sens have improved by this summer. So like for me to think, like, I can't take that aspect out of it. Like I have to say he's gonna hit at least 70 points next season. And that's because I think the team around him is just like, in my head, they're just so significantly better than they were last year and the year before that I can't.
I mean, realistically, it's like 2 players though.
Yeah, but their top 6 is like completely changed.
I understand that. It's just,
and it's only 12 more points, and he's probably gotten better himself, let alone.
Yeah, so I think he's hitting 70.
I need to see
Easy.
that because I want to see.
I mean, you said 68 and
I know,
went
I know.
over.
No, 100%. I do think he's gonna hit at least 70. I'm just saying, like,
I mean, he could go 75 to be honest.
The power play needs to figure it out early this season, and then instead of like the latter half like last year. And if that happens, then we could be looking at even more for all of those players.
See, the power play is an interesting one because by like the end of the season, that like top line, top unit, which was Shabbat if he was healthy, and then Batherson, Norris, Stutzle, Tkachuk, was doing really well. So I don't know if necessarily they're going to keep that unit together, then put DeBrincat, Giroux, Brandstrom, Formanton, and someone else on
Split
this.
power plays never work, and then it shouldn't be a thing.
But you have 6 forwards that should be on a probably first power play unit.
When's the last time a split power play actually worked?
Never. It has never worked.
I don't think it's ever worked.
If ideally your first one is the better one, they'll stick out them for like an hour, minute and a half. If that doesn't work, then the second one comes on for 30 seconds.
What the hell kind of penalties are we getting this year?
I don't know. And then by the time you get your second one out, you usually want like a second defenseman on it too, because it's going to be done by that point. The only team that uses a forward all the way through is like Edmonton, Washington, and that's McDavid, Ovechkin. Because like for me, I think it's going to be very clear what the power play should be throughout maybe preseason and like the first couple games. And
Tkachuk should be on there.
I don't think so.
He's the only guy that scores consistently the way he does.
Like the net front
on the
presence
team.
on the
The
power
net
play.
front present is so overblown, bro. And
How's the Washington power play without it?
We don't like Oshie stays in the high slot. There's no one in front of the net.
Yeah, it's been working so well with him there.
No, there's definitely way better options that they can create a way better power play. Like if they have DeBrincat on the left, Norris on the right, like someone in the bumper position, whether it's like in the high slot where it's it could be like Batherson or Stutzle, and then Shabbat high, and then one of the other guys low. Where for me that would be Stutzle in the middle, and then maybe Batherson down low, and they can switch with Norris and stuff like that. I think that's a way better power play than just sticking someone in front of the net, and then taking away passing lanes and just jamming everything up.
But he was a really good passer last year.
But he wasn't using his passing on the power play.
He was.
No, you're not. If you're standing in front of the net, you're very seldom using your passing.
No, but he goes off to the side often. He's not. He doesn't just.
He's not a better passer than like anyone else on that top 6. Like I would have more of an argument to have Giroux on the top power play, which I don't think he should be, than Tkachuk.
I respectfully disagree.
I disrespectfully don't want Tkachuk on the first power play.
Well, I think
he's going to be
up.
on the first power play, and it may work. I think it's going to hinder whoever else.
He's definitely going to be on the first power play.
They pay him way too much money to be on the second power play.
Yeah.
But whoever is on the second power play, it's really going to hurt their overall point production. And if that's Batherson, Stutzle, Giroux, it's going to be one of those guys that gets hurt.
I assume it's going to be Giroux, but I could literally see any combination, them throwing it out there. Or if one guy's going that night, then you're putting him there. I don't know.
I don't know. The whole 2 power play thing is just not a working thing.
But I think they may have to put potentially 1 or 2 like really good guys on forward on the second unit.
They have obviously they're going to have to put other guys on the second power play. It's just you're not going to get that much out of your second power play regardless.
Well,
so
which 2 are you putting on the second then? Tkachuk and Giroux? In your opinion?
I'd probably put Tkachuk, Batherson.
Okay.
And then I'd honestly put
on the second power play.
And then I push because Giroux I think would be either better in the high slot than either of those 2 or down low. It also depends on how they structure their power play. If they're going to go for the net front presence, then you can only put Tkachuk there out of the top 6.
I mean, Leafs don't have any net front presence.
And their power play is insane.
And their power play is insane, yeah.
Washington doesn't. Florida doesn't. Pittsburgh doesn't.
Yeah.
Colorado doesn't.
You can score on the power play in different ways, you know. You can have an effective power play in different ways.
But like,
It isn't a generally used thing. I'm not saying it can't work. I'm saying that they definitely have better options.
It was a much bigger thing before the era of like the 4 forward came in for the power plays. Sure. Yeah, when there was a 2 defender, 3 forward, you get the net front. It was a much bigger thing back then.
But he's not a guy that's only taking away the eyes. Like he is a very good deflector. Like he's not Joe Pavelski, but he's like he gets on his stick on pucks a lot as well.
But I don't think that. Like I've seen a lot of Giroux doing that very well as well.
And I would say for the Leafs, Tavares is really good at doing that.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
Tavares has like some of the best hand-eye hand-eye coordination.
It's weird we're saying something good about him.
But you see him on the power play, and he's not really doing that. He's not in that present. He's not trying to deflect pucks.
Mm-hmm. It kind of just the opportunity comes to him.
Yeah.
Hey,
we'll see what happens.
I know what's gonna happen. He's gonna be on the first unit. If he's not,
no, he's gonna be. It's just he's not. But it's the only thing he can do on the unit, though. Whichever unit he plays on, it's the only thing he can do.
Regardless,
he's a good passer, guys.
Yeah, but you're replacing a great passer while doing that.
If you're doing a diamond formation, he can be the point. He can be the diamond guy. He can be the one right in the slot.
But even then, there's better players that can be better guys that would be better at that than him. That's my thing.
They may also just figure out which 4 guys have the best chemistry and roll them. So it could literally be like DeBrincat and Giroux on the second unit or something if the other guys are just all firing on all cylinders.
But that's what I'm saying. That 2-unit thing is just pointless.
No, but you're going to have to put 2 guys on the second.
If you're splitting your power plays...
The top 6, you're having 2 good guys on the second unit regardless.
But regardless, if you put DeBrincat on your second power play, it's
okay, it was an example. I'm not saying that's going to happen.
For me, DeBrincat and Norris on either side is like just a code for success because you have 2 shooters and both of them have the ability to pass as well, so it's going to open something up for someone. Because if everyone gets drawn to him, let's say Norris for a one-timer, he can either shoot it or just wait someone out, and you'll have either DeBrincat or whoever's in front of the net or the point wide open, and it can be on either side. If you take that away, it becomes more concerning, because if you look at teams that overload one side with 2 passers and then 3 shooters on either side, like Washington's doing, and which is why their power play has started getting worse for the last 2 years, it's not going to work as well, because everything has to be jammed from one side going to the other, and everyone knows where the passing lane is. If there's that's why Winnipeg's power play isn't as effective as it used to be, because it's just Blake Wheeler passing it, or whoever's down low, Ehlers, whatever, and everyone knows it's either going to Scheifele or Connor if he's playing on that side, or the point. That's why their power play's been effective, because everyone knows that Wheeler's never going to shoot.
If I had to guess right now, I think they start Jimmy and Giroux on the second unit.
I mean, they're going to try a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. And
if
we'll
I
see
had
how
to
it works out.
If I had to guess, I would say they're going to start Batherson and Giroux.
On the second unit.
I don't know what that second unit is going to be, because we don't know what formation.
I don't see Giroux starting on the second unit.
Really?
Right off the bat, I think he's. I'm not saying he can't move there, but right off the bat, new player, new excitement. I think he's going to be on the first unit.
Because I think Batherson's probably the best passer, in my opinion.
I don't think he's better than Giroux, though.
Okay, well, but I think he's bigger and younger, so I think.
I think like game
one arguments, so they're trying to win.
Yeah, but game one of the season.
You also picked Giroux in the second.
Game 1 of the season,
that's more of what I think is going to happen. Not what should happen.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking. I don't know. I think the excitement's too high for him to. I think game 1 of the season, you're going to see him on the first unit.
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, I think Ottawa, yes, has you could argue multiple guys being the best passer, but I think Batherson is a very good passer, and I think he's a really good bumper guy. Then I think they'll put Kachuk in front, both 1Ts, and then Chabot on the point for the first.
We'll see what happens in preseason. I think that's where they're going to figure it out.
Yeah. All right. That's enough talk about Jimmy, unfortunately.
We went from Stutzle to Kachuk and Giroux.
So I'll let Sufi start because he's a closet Montreal fan.
I'm not a closet Montreal. They're my second favorite team.
Closeted. Just come out of the closet, man. It's fine.
No.
So, Nick Suzuki, a new
nice
captain of the Montreal Canadiens.
He's born the same year as me.
Go ahead, talk about it.
I mean, I don't really think there was another
option /
choice. Like, he's by a significant margin right now until Caulfield really breaks out. He's their best player, and he seems to be a good leader as well from what we can see. Like, he's the one that's always, having conversations with refs, or like he's turned more into like than just like the guy that has the most skill on the team. And I think that might have been a lot of help from like Gallagher and Weber, all those guys being there. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was like a conversation with Gallagher, because he seemed to be like the obvious choice in terms of like when you look for a captain. Like, it seems guys like that usually get it.
I mean, he calls out 19, 20-year-olds for falling on the ice.
Rightfully so. And anyways, like, I think that he's best player on the team, and going forward, if he's going to be their highest paid player, and he just has, like, for me, he's just captain material. I don't know how else to say it, because especially in the second half, like after St. Louis like actually started running things the way that they should have been run, everything was going through Suzuki and Caulfield, and they both stepped up to the plate. And so I think that the future for Montreal has to go through them.
Yeah, I mean, this is nowhere near as, this is not even like up for any kind of discussion like that Trouba decision was, right? Like, I mean, this is just the most obvious decision that you could have made for captaincy.
The only other thing you could have done is wait, but then I feel like it would have went to him eventually anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, the way he played after St. Louis took over, it's just, I mean, you just know that, he's gonna be the guy it goes through. It's
kind of just first line center. Everyone's gonna like it's gonna gravitate to him eventually anyway.
Now how he manages, like, he's really young still.
Yeah.
So that's, he's really young.
22.
Yeah.
But 23.
22-year-old captain of the Montreal Canadiens. 23. That's a big one.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be a lot of hard times, especially right now with like smack in the middle of a rebuild and stuff. But hopefully the Habs fans have less expectations of like overall results and become like the Sens fans where it was like all optimism all the time. I don't think it's going to happen, but we'll hope for that for their sake. But I think he's had a lot of guys to learn from since just being in the NHL with like Gallagher, Weber, Price, all those guys, all the leaders in the room. So, and like a few of those guys are still there. So,
and he's on pay. Like, if he's 22 years old and 23 years old, sorry, but being captain at this age when your team's still rebuilding in Montreal, like, if he handles it well and the team turns around and the team does good things, like, he's gonna be like, Montreal's Alfredson or Sundin, or he's gonna be that guy that started off young. He's been the captain for years and years, and he's gonna be like that guy with like the key to the city kind of thing. It's gonna be like that, and we're missing. I don't know. We don't have, ever since like Alfie retired, ever since Sundin retired, like, who's the last captain that was like that revered in a city?
Not Ovi.
Maybe Carlson. Like, in terms of Canadian teams?
In terms of the Canadian teams, like, Sundin, Alfie.
It would have been Carlson if he
stayed.
His trajectory was
that.
He was like
he was heading
a top
that.
3 player in the world at one point.
Arguably.
Because the
you can have a heavy argument about that. Like,
I know. Not getting into that right now. Yeah. I don't know enough about this.
Maybe McDavid now, just because he's so darn good.
Crosby, Ovechkin, like all those Canadian teams. It was literally just McDavid.
Yeah, we talked Canadian teams, and then you said Crosby.
I'm the one that's a Canadian teams. He's Team Canada. That's what I'm getting.
Roberto Luongo.
But I mean, Suzuki's also already performed in the playoffs as well with 2019-20 at age 20 at 7 and 10 games, and then in their miraculous run at 16 and 22, and he was really good that all throughout the playoffs in that one. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like, I
no
guess
brainer,
it was
man.
the obvious pick. Like you said, the only other person I would have thought of was maybe Gallagher. And yeah, they could have waited, but may as well do it now if you think he's ready, or this will only just help him in the future. And I agree that maybe potentially not the level of Sundin or Alfredson or something, but I definitely think he could go down as like, I could see him being like a lifer for the Canadiens.
Exactly,
and stuff,
yeah.
So
lifer and like just I think eventually become a point of game player. I mean, he was in the second half when Ducharme took the shackles off everyone.
It's kind of a tactic too by the Habs, maybe in a little way, like give him captaincy and secure him staying here.
He already signed for like a long time.
Yeah, but still.
But I mean, it was the same thing with, like, they're doing a lot. Like this has been pretty common where they just hand their best player as a captain when they're like before 23 or whatever.
Brady.
That was Kachuk, and then like even if you go further back, it was
Brady's not on that trajectory though.
I think he'll be a loved captain.
Nowhere near
Brady's
Alfie.
in the Jamie Benn.
Nowhere near
trajectory.
Alfie.
No. But okay, we're bringing back the sentence. Think of, but he's a guy you'd love to have on your team. Like obviously, you guys both don't like him because you don't like playing against. You think he's annoying.
Yes,
stuff.
I would love to have Brady Kachuk on my team.
Yeah.
If Brady Kachuk was making $6.5 million, I would. 100%.
We're talking about the player specifically.
Yes.
We're not talking about contract. Right
I
now.
would love him on my team if he was making $6.5 million. I have to factor in contract, bro. If you're overpaid, you're overpaid.
Nah, I like him on my team. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I would.
and so that's why I think like, yeah, he may not be a point per game player every year or something, and I don't think Suzuki will necessarily be.
I don't
that.
think he'll ever be a point per game player.
Ever.
Kachuk? Never.
I think he'll have 1 or 2 seasons.
He might have
probably.
an 82 point season, sure,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
I also don't think people realize that not every single player in the top 6 can have 80-plus points, which is what I think every Sens fan seems to be
I don't.
expecting.
Like
The
you said
scoring is-
earlier, you
it's
said
gonna
like
be-
around 70. I could see.
Yeah,
that.
you're not the
It's going to be
Leafs, bro.
spread out, man. Even like right now when everyone's developing, like I could see like multiple players getting 70 and then like maybe a few in the 60s, like, and then as everyone gets better, it could be like a couple in the 80s and then some guys in the 70s. So scoring is going to be spread out. There's no way that many players can get that many points all the time. They'd have to be like a 500 goal scoring team in a year, which is ridiculous.
Which is definitely possible.
Even Colorado couldn't do that. So I don't know. And Suzuki, I could see being a point of game player all the time. Like he just racks up assists, and if he has people to pass it to, like when Ducharme finally put when Caulfield finally ended up on his line, it was pretty evident that he just needed someone to actually score for him, except for instead of having like Joel Armia on his line all the time or whoever, what's his face stuck on there. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I think each of our teams right now has some pretty good captains. Like I think. Like Tavares was a captain younger on another team, and I think he, I think Matthews probably could have gotten it, but I think it was kind of like the Weber situation. Like you brought a guy in that knows what to do already, kind of give it to him, and then obviously Ovechkin speaks for himself.
I don't think Tavares is honestly a bad captain.
Oh no,
he's just in a very
good.
heavily scrutinized market. If Tavares was playing in Arizona, we wouldn't be having
Oh
conversations.
yeah, he'd have like
about
110
But-
points every year because he'd play like 30 minutes a game, and
No, but I don't think it's not his captaincy that's at like scrutiny. It's his.
Bro, people question his captaincy.
Yeah, they do, but that's not his main. Like, yeah,
No.
they're gonna screw. His
Yeah.
his main thing is his production,
but I think
Even his
people.
production is like fine right now. It's just not.
which is it's not bad, but it's not $11 million worth.
I think casual
Yeah.
fans just look at, Marner and Matthews have this many points. Why the heck does Tavares have the captaincy? When your best player doesn't have to be the captain, like the Sens.
It's gonna be
Tavares is one of-
Kovalchuk isn't the best player, but
See-
I think he's
Thank
a
God.
guy who, brings everyone into the fight and stuff. Like he's the one of the most noticeable players because he does a bit of everything. And I think
Very
you don't
noticeable
have
after
to
the
be
whistle.
the best player to have a captaincy. Like, yeah, look at the Rangers again. Like we said earlier, like Trouba, not the best player by any means, but evidently, like watching that speech when he was talking about his wife and stuff, like a guy who probably everyone in the locker room really likes, a guy that really, really cares, and that's what you need out of a captain, honestly.
Yeah, no, I'm not like I don't think historically even captains have always been the best player.
Yeah.
So like that's never the. Yeah. So yeah, I know we scrutinized Trouba, but I think we.
I still scrutinize Trouba.
Yeah, but then obviously
see the
we
white
don't.
videos.
We don't know the dressing
He was
room.
crying when talking about
Yeah.
her.
I cried too.
Yeah, I know. I was like, that's literally
That's
you in the
That's a lot
NHL.
of pressure. At $8 million a year, being a mediocre defenseman and the captain.
You're a mediocre
franchise.
defenseman. I guess we can't get
Might be
Trouba
the
on the
biggest
podcast.
franchise.
In terms of worth, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It always alternates between like Toronto, New York,
New York
and
has been off for a while, bro.
and Montreal or something. Yeah,
People love hockey in New York.
The New York
Yeah.
Rangers.
yeah.
Nice. They're worth $2 billion. Holy moly.
And they're still not in the top however many.
Oh, the Sens are number 2.
Yeah.
The least favorite.
All right, so that's enough of that talk. Do we want to talk about Evan Rodriguez because his name's Evan?
So
Okay, I have nothing to say about Evan Rodriguez.
All right. Well, this is the time where we're going to throw it over to our guest. So this is Ross Levitan of the Locked On Senators podcast. So enjoy the interview, guys. So we have a very special guest today. We have Ross Levitan, the host of the Locked On Senators podcast. How's it going, Ross?
Oh, fantastic, Evan. Thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it and happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So just to start off, obviously you're on a Senators podcast. And so you've been doing that for a very, very long time. You have hundreds and hundreds of episodes, but you also work for a news station as well. So I was just going to ask you how you got into both of those and which one of those do you prefer?
Well, I mean, I've been a diehard Sens fan since I was like 3 years old, maybe even younger. And so lots of great memories for that. It's such a passion, and it's great that I can do it from anywhere, right? As long as I've got my microphone, it's all good. So after we started the podcast, I moved to Winnipeg, and that's where kind of the news aspect came in. I'm trying to wiggle my way into sports at the station. We've got the Blue Bombers and Winnipeg Jets rights, so we broadcast all their games. So trying to get into that, I love it. I love how they're different too, right? Because that way I can have my kind of passion of talking about the Sens, but at the same time, branch out a little bit and not be so one dimensional. When I was living in Toronto after school, I worked at TSN Radio in Toronto, and I was the producer of Leafs Lunch and Leafs Game Night. So that was a little more ironic because I obviously grew up hating the Leafs, and one of my favorite things is their first round playoff streak. But then when I'm working doing the games, obviously the longer they play, the more shifts I get, the more money I make. So I was in a pretty tough situation there. But now being in Winnipeg and working in news, I think it's a good way to learn a new city. Like I had never even been to Winnipeg when I moved here. My lady is from here, and she got a fantastic job opportunity out of school. So it was kind of a no-brainer for us to move here. Obviously, the cost of living kind of helps as well. But yeah, it's a great way to kind of get to learn a new city, kind of learn the ins and outs, all the festivals, everything. Because I'm not a big news guy, like when it comes to like watching or listening to the news. So to be involved in it and get to be on air right away, that was huge. But long answer short, obviously I got to lean towards talking about the Sens. It's obviously my passion. I do it with Pillsy, who's one of my best friends. So nothing better than logging in and just shooting the breeze. And we've got the opportunity to chat with so many great people. I know you included there, Evan, and it's been awesome to get to be a part of such an awesome community. So the hometown aspect probably weighs in too, but I'll have to go with the Sens. Sorry, CJOB.
Yeah, I mean, like moving to a new city, getting to learn everything on the news about what's going on and everything. That's probably the most ideal way and most comfortable way to adjust to a new city.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, during the pandemic, it made it a little tough because we were working from home for the first like 6-7 months. So it was hard to like meet everyone. And I only knew one person in this whole province when I moved here. So no, but now that we're back in the office, it's great getting to meet people. Not as many Leaf fans, which I won't complain about, versus obviously being in the heart of enemy territory. So no, it's been great. Great people here. It actually reminds me a lot of Ottawa. In terms of kind of the vibe of the city. My girlfriend says it's exactly like Ottawa, just without the scenic downtown. That's how she describes it here. But everyone who says it's so cold, it's like, man, winter in Ottawa is not that much easier. So I have a laugh at that. There's obviously some stereotypes here, but I'm loving it. It's great. And yeah, working in news is certainly a decent way to get acquainted with the town, but don't be surprised when I try to wiggle myself over to Jets coverage a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, my hot take for this season is Jets are making the playoffs and like in
that.
a positional spot. So
yeah,
we'll see. So
like
something else
in a divisional, so like top 3 in the Central.
Yeah, that's my hot take.
All right. I mean, if Hellebuck can bounce back, I mean, there's no reason why they can't. They just couldn't figure it out last year. Not to get too off track, but it just seemed like, and obviously I have to sift through all their coaching comments after every game, and it really gave me like Dave Cameron in Ottawa vibes, where it's just like, we just have to work harder. There was no like strategy to it, especially when Dave Lowry came in. So I like that hot take. I think maybe wild card, but they've got Perfetti coming up. I love what he's going to bring. And obviously Kyle Connor, Nikolai Ehlers, like the weapons are all there. It's just a matter of kind of putting it together. So I don't mind that. We'll revisit that a little later in the season.
Yes. So what I was going to ask you about, since obviously your passion is the Ottawa Senators, this is probably the biggest offseason in Senators history, getting two people that weren't on the team last year, so DeBrincat and Giroux, then also signing multiple 8-year extensions. So I was going to ask you, what are your thoughts on the offseason, and what aspect do you think will have the biggest impact?
Yeah, I think for biggest impact, it's got to be Alex DeBrincat, just with the age he's at, just with everything that he's going to bring when it comes to scoring more goals that Ottawa obviously struggled a little bit with last year at certain times. But for me, like, just the continued ability for them to lock up their young core, which we'd seen kind of slip away over the last number of years, with guys just kind of rotating out whenever it was their time to go. So for me, like, obviously Brady committing for 7 years was huge, but getting Norris and Stutzle at 8 years, and with Stutzle still a year left on his entry level, locked up for 9 years, like, that just, it's so foreign to me after all the Duchesnes and Stones and Carlsons of the world. I think that change in perception of how the Sens are viewed around the league from players, media, coaches, everybody, I think that in itself is enormous. And maybe it doesn't make the on ice impact right away, but it certainly puts the Senators out of the conversation of being kind of a joke, right? At the end of the day, like the farm team for the rest of the NHL. So I think that those, for a long-term goal, and if the arena comes through as well, we add that to the list. I think that those things are better building blocks for the organization than any one player can make on the ice. And I think Giroux's actually part of that too, right? By him coming here, that's I'd say borderline, if not out on the outside looking in. Although his career's not done, but when it comes to being a Hall of Famer, but he's certainly been one of the best players over the last decade in the National Hockey League. So they just add all this credibility. It's kind of like what we like to do on our show is when we have these guys on, whether I knew them from TSN, like when we were starting out, like today was episode 629. Nobody listened to the first 100 episodes. And then I'd start getting like a Craig Button, a Jamie McLennan, and they add credibility to our show. All of a sudden, we're better, right? It's kind of like the same thing for the Sens. They're adding these good players. They're adding this credibility to their team that they can keep these players. And all of a sudden, hopefully it translates onto the ice and they start winning some more games. But they'll be a fun team. No matter how it goes this year, they're going to be a fun team. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, like, getting those interviews, I think, are awesome, and we really appreciate you coming on. So you're going to be our Craig Button, essentially.
Let's go! I'm ready. That's a big one. I gotta talk in circles a couple times. Then I know I always give Craig a hard time. He hates goalies, so I always like to give it back to him a little bit.
Awesome. So I think Sufi had a question next.
Yeah, what's up?
So because I'm kind of impartial on the Sens because I live here, but I'm a Caps fan and I'm not a Leafs fan like Omer is, so I'm a little more in the middle than everyone else. I actually love the offseason moves that they did get. I'm excited about DeBrincat. I'm excited about Giroux. My biggest concern and for the Sens is that I've had really critical of their decor, and I think that for me that's the main hindrance for them, and that's what's going to keep them out of the playoffs for me. So I was wondering what your general outlook is for them for their decor, and if you think that they do need another piece to make the next level, or if they can work with this decor and potentially make the playoffs regardless.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, Sufi. I think where I'd start is saying that they're putting a lot of pressure on Jake Sanderson to come in and be a 20-minute munching defenseman right off the gate who's solid in his own end. He's shown at every level that he can be that guy. I think it's a lot to ask for sure, but they've obviously, like, to me, their top pair is maybe not as good, but close. Like, can compete with all the other top pairs in the division. Like, I love what Zub brings to Shabbat. Those two together just like calms them down. And I'm expecting a big year for Shabbat. This is year 6 for him now. Like, he's not a young kid anymore. This guy's like turning 25 years old. He's entering the prime of his career, and now he's going to have some weapons to work with. The points really haven't been there for him as often. I think this year is going to be big for Shabbat. Now, beyond that, yeah, there's tons of question marks. I actually liked, and I know that he was so scrutinized off the bat, but I liked what Travis Hamonic brought last year in the last 19 games. He's certainly not the player that he was in New York when he was like a top pair guy, a legitimate, shutdown defenseman. But I think that he could complement Sanderson well. DJ Smith's already said he's going to start with him at training camp. And I think if he can pick it up, and DJ said he was hurt at the end of last year. I don't know how much I buy into that. I think they should have sat him if he was. They're playing pretty meaningless games. Same with Zaitsev, who is hopefully, by the time this podcast comes out, even if it's later today, I'm hoping Zaitsev's off the team by then. But the main the main team that I'll bring up is the Florida Panthers, right? Because that's a team who's President's Trophy winners last year. They're the top dogs in the division, or top cats, I should say. And their decor, like, it doesn't impress me that much. They got Gustav Forsling, who my Locked On Panthers guys telling me that's a breakout candidate, but I'll reserve my judgment until I see him a little bit more in a top pair role now that Mackenzie Weegar's gone. But like Lucas Carlson, Mark Stahl's going to play in their top 6, Brandon Montour, like, nobody's complaining about that decor as much. And I know that it's probably got a little more battle testedness with Aaron Ekblad and Radko Gudas as the other two to fill that out. I just don't think it's going to be as much of a problem. Their decor is better than it was last year. And that's probably more so an indictment on how bad their decor was last year. But I think that Jake Sanderson's going to, it's crazy to say as a 20-year-old, but I think he's going to bring a level of stability. It's just kind of the way he plays. He's just such a cerebral player. So I'm hopeful that it's going to be okay, at least till the start. I know that Pilsy is more on the wait and see approach. And I think that's dangerous with the way they've started the last couple of years, 4 wins in their first 20 games in each of the last few years. It simply can't happen again. But if you wait until the trade deadline, you can get those sellers who are trying to move pending UFAs. I don't know what Calgary's going to do this year. They could be really good. Who knows? But if not, let's say they stumble out of the gate, all of a sudden they're trying to move Mackenzie Weegar for something. Sens are in a playoff push. Boom, you can add a guy there, maybe at a little bit of a discounted price. But that's a long-winded way of saying that I think to start the year, it's okay. But all that hinges on Jake Sanderson, and it might be asking too much of him. But either way, that's kind of the predicament they put themselves in. And every team knows, right? Like, yeah, you want Jacob Chychrun, but are you really going to pay like an Erik Karlsson level return? Like, I'm not giving 6 assets up for Jacob Chychrun. It's a nice contract, but I'm just not doing it. So I think that even Alfie over there, he's not going to do it either. He's barking up a storm. Sorry about that. But no, I think that they're below average as a decor. But I think they have the top end skill, and Chabot plays so many minutes already that they might be able to outscore their problems, at least early on in the season.
It's funny that you mentioned Florida, because that's another team that I was heavily critical of. And
nice.
I thought my hot take was them missing the playoffs this year. So
man, Bet Online, our sports book, has their over under on points set at 105.5. I'm hammering
all day. Yeah,
hammering the under on that. That's my lock of the year right there.
For sure.
Yeah, but yeah, so look at the other teams in the division then that are going to be competitive. Like Tampa, obviously, they lose McDonough, and I know they had to with salary cap, but he's still a sick player. So like that decor to me is going to be a little bit worse. Can Sergachev step up and be a top 4 guy? I think he's prone to mistakes, but pretty solid offensively. And then, Toronto, that's been kind of their Achilles heel the last little while too. So I think, super interesting to see how the decor shakes out, because I think the Atlantic Division, they're all, and Boston or Boston rather, without McAvoy for the first 3 months. Like, how good's their decor too? It's going to be interesting. I think there's going to be a ton of goals. Hammer the over too in games that are all Atlantic Division this year for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking as a Leafs fan, I can tell you defense is overrated.
Yes, maybe not in Game 7, so
actually, my hot take for this year is that Boston possibly missing the playoffs. So I'm excited to see that.
Nice.
If it happens. One question I have for you actually is, we actually just did our individual division previews for this upcoming season, and we started with the Atlantic Division. And I wanted to ask you, like, all 3 of us had Ottawa in different spots because of the way we view the changes they made. And I wanted to ask you, where do you think Sens will end up this year?
Oh man, this is a tough one for me, because obviously, and I think why our show has gained traction is like we're unapologetic, like we're Sens fans at the end of the day. Like, we're not trying to be the unbiased. We obviously have media training in school, and that's kind of what we do, but I think that the passion will take over at some point. So I know that's the Leafs catchphrase there. You guys all have the passion up until spring. But no, in all seriousness, I think when it comes to Sens, I need to see this team, because how long is it going to take for the new guys to gel? It's not going to be overnight. And I think we're going to get some hilarious cold takes exposed if the Sens come out at 2-3 to start the year, 2-5. Like, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that this team is going to struggle out of the gate. They've got so many new pieces. They've got so many guys they're trying to fit in. A couple key pieces. Like, everyone's penciling in Shane Pinto as a 40-point guy. This guy's played 17 NHL games, 5 in the last 12 months. Like, I think it's a lot to ask for this guy to just jump on on the treadmill here going 100 miles an hour, which is good that he's playing the rookie tournament, which I was a bit surprised, but good to get his feet under him. I just think that this team, especially, like, I don't know if I'm even going to make a prediction until like 25 games into the season, because I know I'm just going to look like such a dummy. But I'll give you one just for fun. I'll say they're playing competitive games with 20 games left, and it depends how they do down the stretch. Like, if they get a Cam Talbot that Minnesota got down the stretch, then let's go. He won 13 out of his last 15 starts. So I think it was a little tough on him that Marc-Andre Fleury was brought in when he was in the All-Star game last year. I know he played on a good Minnesota team, but I think that was more Bill Guerin going with a guy he knew, right? Fleury and him won a cup together as players in 2009. And obviously people like having guys they trust, and maybe it just wasn't the right situation. But I actually really like Cam Talbot, and I think that down the stretch it's going to come down to goaltending. It always does. And so my final answer, I'll say they'll be playing competitive games, playoff implications with 20 games left, and we'll see from there. That'd be triple what they've done the last couple of years, where they're out of it by the end of November.
Yeah, that's a pretty good prediction. I think all three of us are probably kind of agreeing. Oh, maybe Sufi might not be agreeing on that.
Nobody has Ottawa winning the division. Come on.
No hot takes there, unfortunately.
I have them in contention. I said they were only going to miss it by like 2 or 3 points,
okay.
But they're going to finish 6th, because I have 5 Atlantic teams making it.
So do you have Detroit ahead of Ottawa?
I have Detroit ahead of Ottawa. I have 4. So yeah, no, they're going to miss by a couple points. But honestly, from like 4 to 6 in the Atlantic, I'd have maybe like 4 or 5 points separating those teams. Like, I think it's going to be very close down the stretch.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about is this past week, you guys had a huge interview on your show with Pierre Dorion. I thought that was amazing. So how did that all come about, and how did you feel that you feel like he was open enough? Because I feel like as a general manager, you don't want to share everything, but I feel like in some of the parts of the show, he was like very open about like the Mark Stone trade and everything.
Yeah,
so
good, eh?
yeah, what was your kind of take on that?
Well, it was cool. I mean, funny enough, like, this is just the irony and just like how small Canada is. Like, I felt like when I was moving to Winnipeg, I was going so far away. Like, driving through Ontario, I was like, this thing never ends. Like, it was like 20 hours to drive through Ontario. That's neither here nor there. But I actually met Pierre at a Winnipeg Ice game, of all places. So went up to him. I was like, hey man, like, big Sens fan here. Like, great to meet you. He's like, do you have a show? Like, he kind of recognized me from that. I don't think he's ever watched or listened, but he kind of could recognize me somehow. Maybe the PR guys mentioned to him. So I chatted with him for probably 10 minutes there. I kind of want to leave him be. Like, this is the playoffs. The Sens still had the 7th overall pick. Winnipeg had 2 guys who were, I think they ultimately went like 8 and 11, Matthew Savoy and Connor Geekie, studs. So he was busy doing that. And then I have a bit of a relationship, I guess, with the Sens PR guy just from over the years of like requesting players. And we'd always kind of request like the mid-tier prospects, because we don't want to, step on any toes or kind of step out of line. And it would take like a few emails back and forth just to get, like, the first time we had Mando on. Awesome dude, by the way, Kevin Mandolese. But then we're just like, hey, I met him, like, we're chatting with him, like, we had a good chat. So I reached out. I said, hey, I met Pierre at this game the other night. Like, would he be open and coming on? And he wrote back to me like a week later being like, yeah. Like, when do you want him? And I thought, like, you know what? The timing's kind of weird on that. Like, it's like May, like the playoffs were still going on. The Sens were done. I knew there were going to be changes this off season. So I wrote back. I was like, hey, why don't we put this on the shelf? Like, we'd love to have him, but why don't we do it like preseason type thing? So, so it's been in the works since May. And then it just so happened. So we were scheduled to do it at 10 a.m. and at 8:30, so which is 9, because I'm an hour earlier. So I'm up at like 7 a.m. I'm fired up for this interview. I get an email right out of the shower. He goes, we're going to have to push it back to 1 o'clock today. Sorry, it's a fluid day. And that should have been my hint something was going on. But sure enough, an hour later, we get the news Tim Stutzle signs the extension. And I was like, oh no, because we had reached out and we're chatting with Timmy and he was going to come on. And then right away when that happened, I was like, 0% chance we get him. That guy's celebrating tonight. No chance he's coming on. And I was even like, I don't know if Pierre will come on. Like, he's busy. They had the bloggers out to the stadium that day. I knew he was busy with the media and everything going on. but credit to him, man. He still came on with us and he gave us some honest answers. I appreciated that about him. So ended off by saying that he was interested in coming back. So hopefully we can make it a thing. And I think next we're going to try for DJ before the season. So we'll try to get the head coach on, the GM, and we've had almost every player on, but still not Brady Tkachuk. So he's become our new white whale. We've had Shabbat on, we've had Stutzle, Sanderson, Greg, all those guys, but we got to get the captain on to make it official. Haven't had Josh Norris, but did get his dad on. So I thought that was kind of a fun, different type of interview to have Dwayne Norris, who's a legend in Newfoundland, by the way, legend out there. But yeah, it went great with Dorial. I'm glad you enjoyed it as well. By far our most viewed and most watched podcast we've ever done outside of a 4-hour mock draft. Mock drafts, by the way, great way to get the engagement. Everyone loves a good mock draft. But yeah, it was great having him. And it's just ironic that for a Sens podcast, Sens GM, we met in an arena in Winnipeg, and that's how it all started.
Yeah, that's like you said, having all those players on and you starting years ago when 600 episodes later, and
Yeah,
you know, it's crazy how far you can come. And that's, yeah, it was such a big interview. And like, I'm, as you know, like tons of Sens diehards listen to the podcast. So like a GM versus even a player could be more interesting because you get all these information that, you know, you may never have heard before. So
yeah, and we were trying to make it so that it wasn't like, you know, when he goes on TSN 1200, it's basically like, give me an update on this, give me an update on that, like who's battling this. I was like, no, I want to get to know. I don't think fans like know who he is a lot, like his background, being in scouting, his dad passing away when he was 21 years old, and right when he was out of school, he gets a job in the NHL. Like he's 50, I think, right now, and he's worked in the NHL for 27 years. Like it's pretty impressive. I know that people like to clown on him a little bit with, he's got the, like, it's English as second language. I'm sure that, okay, like the we're a team thing, like these are things that I think just like come out and maybe gets nervous, but he was so like calm, cool. And it's been a pretty stressful job for him too, the last 5 years, having to rebuild this whole thing. So yeah, I already respected him, but I had a whole new level of respect. He was willing to give us his time like that. And yeah, hopefully we can make it a bit more of a recurring thing, because obviously he adds quite a layer of credibility to what we do, and we're just trying to have fun, talk about the Sens. I think he appreciated that we weren't just like who's gonna make the team, who's gonna do this and that. So we just wanted to butter him up a little bit, talk about his life, and we start every interview the same, and with him the same, where how'd you fall in love with hockey? We find that just kind of like makes them reflect on themselves and their upbringing, and I just love how it kind of opens up for more conversation, makes them feel comfortable right away, because they're just talking about what they love, and it reminds them that that's all it is. At the end of the day, it's a business, yeah, but at the end of the day, we're all just kids enjoying what we loved back when we were like 5 years old.
yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, I think you guys took it in a great approach, like not pressuring him, making it awkward for him. And yeah, that was awesome. So the last thing I was going to ask you was, so we have, like I said, a head-to-head every episode.
Yeah.
So this past one, a lot of people were comparing the Stutzle contract to the Jack Hughes contract. So my question was, over the next little while, which player would you rather have and why?
Yeah, that's tough, because it's not going to be the answer that I want to give. It's got to be Jack Hughes. I mean, you're looking at first overall pick, a guy who's already, you know, I mean, Timmy can have his breakout year this year and maybe be on the same playing field, but if I had to pick right now, it's got to be Jack Hughes. I mean, he's making less money and he's produced more, and he's got a bit more pedigree being that first overall pick. Now, I think another interesting one, and this is coming across the wire right now, I'm not even sure if you saw it, but Jordan Kyrou just signed an 8-year extension with St. Louis. And that's another player where it's like right on par, if not higher than Timmy. Like, this kid can fly, and he's so smart. He's such a good player. So, I mean, for Timmy to even be in the same sentence as these guys, I think is huge. We're talking about, like, in the next 5 years, these are going to be like your top 6 guys on Team Canada and Team USA when it comes to Hughes and Kyrou. And now you're adding a guy who obviously is like the top line guy in Germany with Leon whenever we finally get that World Cup of Hockey that we've been so patiently waiting for. But yeah, if you have to ask me one head to head, I hate to say it, Timmy Superstar's my boy, but Jack Hughes is just on another level. He's the first overall pick for a reason.
Yeah, I tried to defend him as hard as I could. I'm not gonna lie, but
He's on another planet, man. And I think he's even got more more to come. Like he was injured a lot last year, still over a point per. He still like tied. Did he have 56 points? So he tied. Did Timmy have 58 or? Anyways, pretty much point for point with Timmy, and he played 30 less games. So I mean, you got to give the guy a little bit of a pass ahead on that one.
Yeah. Any other questions, guys?
Well, did you tell him my take on Hughes, where it was like, I think eventually I could see Hughes being a top 5 player in the NHL.
Yeah, you know what? I like look at the wingers he's played with over the last few years. Like it's pretty pathetic. I think even, and I'm not a huge fan of that Palat contract. I think it's going to age poorly at the end. But right now, like Palat is a stud, and I think that he'll bring a level of stability if they're playing together. Obviously, they missed out on DeBrincat, they missed out on Fiala, they missed out on Tkachuk. It would have all been great line mates for him, but he's the type of guy he's going to create offense by himself too. But I don't hate that. That's high level. Like you're talking like, you know what I mean?
That's tough to get to.
I might meet you at top 10. I might meet you at top 10 for that. But yeah, top 5 to me is like for the next 10 years is probably going to be McKinnon, McDavid, Matthews. If we're going on like players in the league, I mean, Makar's got to be in the mix there as well. But yeah, once you open up past that, I mean, my hot take, I think David Pasternak's still a top 10 player. I think he's going to prove it this year in a contract year. I don't think top 5, but that's probably my equivalent hot take where I'm super high on David Pastrnak. Those two would look sick playing together, by the way.
One question I have for you is obviously you have a really successful podcast right now, and you mentioned earlier that your first 100 episodes, like not many people may have viewed you, but you grew a lot after that.
My mom's listened to every single one. How wild is that? Credit to her. Shout out Patty.
So if you had to give a podcast like ours, we're like 6 episodes young, any advice or any tips, what would they be?
Don't be afraid to reach out to anybody to have them come on. And if they say no, who cares? That's you're going to get rejected and you just got to keep grinding it out. Pilsy and I just have a good dynamic because we've been doing it for so long together. But yeah, I'm trying to think back to when we started, right? We did 65 episodes of a show called Making Sense of the Sens while we were in school. And we just wanted extra reps before we got picked up by Locked On. And I'm trying to think back of like how we did things back then. It's obviously evolved quite a bit, but even then, like it was all about getting interviews like that. Think about it, we do it 5 times a week. Like even our like most diehard listeners get sick of our voice a little bit. So you want to get a little bit of a different avenue. And I think having different people on is a great way to expand that. And our Sen Central Citizen segment, which has been super successful. I love what it means. I love what it does. But not only that, there's kind of a business aspect to it as well. That's probably my number one advice. Like reach out to everybody you can and try to get as many guests on that have unique stories. And then that's how you do it. Just keep it unique for sure.
Well, right now you're our first big fish, so we think.
No, I'm a little fish, man. No, I'm not talking about me. I'm just a guy. I'm just shooting the breeze with you guys. No, I love it, and I made a deal with Pilsy at the start that we would never, ever say no to anybody that asks us to come on the show. It's a huge honor for anyone to reach out, and I love what you guys are doing here. And it was an easygoing conversation, but I'm not a big fish. I'm a small fish that loves shooting the breeze with good guys. So no, but anytime you need help, yeah, let me know. Cause I think that, the only way that I'm eating to be a big enough fish is just from all the contacts that I've made over the years, and you can't make them without going through it. Right. Like there's a time, like I said, where we were in the exact same position, and it's just a matter of, not being nervous. And like, Pierre LeBrun just like replied, he's like, yeah, I'm good. Thanks. No, I'm not going to come on. That's cool. And that's fine. He doesn't owe us anything. Nobody does. But yeah, if you don't ask, you're not going to get the yeses that we do. Like people always ask me how we got Tim Stutzle on right after the draft. I didn't do anything special. I didn't like work any magic tricks. I just emailed the teams of every single guy that Sens drafted. It was during COVID. I was like, hey, can we get this guy on the show? Would love to introduce him to Sens fans. Moncton said no or didn't get back to us about Philip Daou, and Mannheim just sent me Tim's number and was like, hey, plan a time. So it just by casting a wide net, you catch fish when you put enough rods in the water. So I think that's kind of the number one bit of advice that I'd give for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing all that. And anyone else have anything to say?
No, I just wanted to thank you again. It's been a great conversation. We loved having you on the podcast, and just it was a really chill conversation. So yeah, I loved it.
100%. And anytime if you want to bother Pilsy too, he told me he's happy to come on. I was just recording with him before, but yeah, Omar, Sufyan, and Evan, appreciate you guys reaching out. And anytime you want to chat, man, just hit me up, and I'll always be happy to come on.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, man.
No, thanks guys.
All right, welcome back, and thanks again to Ross for joining the podcast. We really, really appreciate it, and appreciated his, unique story about getting into podcasting and broadcasting in general. And he has a vast knowledge on the Senators, and we really appreciated him sharing some of his knowledge. So let's get into the next topic. So this is the first week of starting the division previews, so where we each think certain teams will finish in the NHL regular season. So we're going to start with the Atlantic Division because two of our teams are in that division. So I will start off with Sufyan. And
unbiased one. No, you guys go first. I'm the unbiased one.
No, I'm starting with you.
You're always biased. Doesn't matter who you're talking about.
I don't like either, so it's fine.
Montreal won. And then we'll go through the rest of us. So we'll go... we can go one at a time, bottom to top.
Bottom to top we're doing, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And and we'll explain as we go why we have each team in each position. So, Sophie, we'll start with you.
I thought we were starting with one of us.
Yeah, no, it came to me.
Okay.
I'm going to go Montreal at 8.
I agree with Montreal, and I think we can all agree that they are in a spot where, they have some good young pieces, but, they don't have the greatest defense core. They don't have the greatest depth right now, and their goaltending's up in the air, especially with Jake Allen being their starter.
Jake Allen's a good starter. I think his health is more in question than his play. He's been good when he's played. He just played like 20 games the last 2 years.
Well, that's the thing.
Last year, the goaltending was all Montembeault and Primo. So, yeah. But I think they're going to be better than last year. I just don't think it's going to be...
Yeah, I actually... I also had Montreal at 8th, but I did stop and think about it for a second if I was going to put Buffalo there or Montreal there.
Because they had 55 points last year, but it was like... Ducharme was so bad.
Yeah.
And now they have a full year of St. Louis. I think they're at least going to be like 75, 70, around that range.
I'm pretty sure we're going to agree on 7 as well.
Let's see.
I mean, we know mine.
What's yours?
Buffalo at 7.
You guys Buffalo at 7, Evan?
I also have Buffalo at 7.
I also have Buffalo at 7.
It's a deep division.
Wow, we're all going to agree, guys, the entire way up.
I think this is where it's going to stop agreeing. But this is a very deep division, I think. So, like, even 7, I could see Buffalo hitting, like, early 80s, mid-80s in points, and it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. I definitely have more Atlantic teams making the playoffs.
We'll figure that out.
All right, so where are we at with 6th and Sufi?
Mm-hmm.
I feel so nervous. I don't know. I feel like people are going to hate me. I am going to have the Ottawa Senators at number 6.
So out of the playoffs.
Yes.
All right.
I have Detroit at number 6.
You have Detroit at number 6.
I do.
Yeah, I got Boston at number 6.
No way.
Do you actually? Wow. I mean, like, I think that is like a slight stretch, but I wouldn't be like shocked.
Yeah.
Like it wouldn't knock my socks off.
I could see Boston either if Boston are in a remotely good spot at 2 months in when all their players come back, there's zero chance they finish at 6. If they're at 500 when all their players come back, they're not finishing 6.
If they're not doing well and Krejci's not doing what people think he may do, because I feel like everyone's like, oh my gosh, Krejci's back. Our second line center is saved. Where it's like he's still 38 or whatever it is.
He just needs to be better than Howell was.
No, I know, but I'm saying like that's I don't know. Like I could I don't agree, but I could see it.
I mean, I'm not saying it's set in stone, but yeah, that's
Interesting.
I'm gonna die on that sword this year.
What people think about that? At 5, I have Florida.
Wow. Okay. I have Ottawa at 5.
I think I know where you're going with your playoff picks.
At 5. Yeah. At 5, I have Detroit.
Okay. That's less egregious.
Okay, you're making so much noise every time it goes to you. You're like smacking the table, playing with your
But
watch.
no, my mic is good. No pickup. At 4, I have Detroit.
Wow. Okay.
So that's my hot take. I probably should have had that as my hot take.
Yeah.
So as in like,
We'll see. I'll tell you who. Like, 'cause we'll do our how many teams out of this division are going to make the playoffs at the end.
okay. I have Boston at 4.
Okay.
I got Ottawa at 4.
Woo!
Okay. I have I have Boston at 3.
Yeah.
I have Florida at 3.
I also have Florida at 3.
I have Tampa at 2.
I have Toronto at 2.
Yeah, of course you do.
I thought about putting Toronto lower, but I didn't.
I got Tampa at 2 as well.
Well, okay. All right. Well, I have Toronto at 1.
I have Tampa at 1.
And I have Toronto at 1.
Wow.
But my hot take was no, that wasn't my hot take. But I told you I guaranteed they're finishing the div first. This is the one I'm guaranteeing. Like I'll die on that sword. I'm guaranteeing Toronto finishes first in the division. It's not even a question.
I'll bet you $100 right now.
Actually, never mind. I'm putting Tampa. No, I totally forgot that Matt Murray was the goalie in Tampa at 1, Toronto.
Yeah,
at
that's
2.
why I was like, wow. So
Yeah,
No, you can't change it. You can't change it.
No, I'm changing it.
It's too late.
Tampa at 1, Toronto.
It's still
at
gonna be
2.
Toronto.
Okay, so we'll talk right now about some of our things we didn't agree on in that. So, since you were just talking about it, why are you guaranteeing Toronto 1?
Why am I guaranteeing Toronto 1? Okay, first of all,
Like, would you recommend to viewers that they should put their life savings on the Toronto Maple Leafs to win first in the division?
the viewers should never put the life savings on Toronto for anything ever. It's the worst decision you can ever make in your life. But
Except this season.
why do I put Toronto first? The top 6 is the top 6. We're still going to score a lot of goals. The power play is still going to be top 2, 3 in the league, whatever. Our biggest question moving from Toronto's problem has never been succeeding in the regular season. All right, and they've continued to show that for like the last 5 years in the Matthews era. Anyway, they're great in the regular season, and last year they killed in the regular season. Like it was insane. So I don't think I don't see how what. I know that Murray and Samsonov being the tandem compared to Campbell and
Whoever their backup was.
Riddick. Colgren.
wait, who was our backup last year? Oh, Mrazek.
Oh, yeah.
Mrazek. Mrazek
Yeah,
until they got Charlotte to come in, but I don't see how that's that much worse than Campbell and
It is significantly worse.
like how much like I'm not sold that it's significantly worse until I see the games played.
My only thing with that is like, for me, they're already I think for me Murray is already decently worse than Campbell, and then maybe Samson was an upgrade on the backup because there was no backup.
But I don't think.
But the other problem with that is Samsonov's consistency has to be significantly better. For someone that's played a lot of games in last year, every 3 starts, it was basically just a different version of him. And if he can fix that, he has the skills to be a better goalie. And I think he has the skills to be a better goalie than Murray. Problem with Murray is questions around his play aren't the only questions that people have. It's the injury history.
Yeah.
And you're banking on that for a team that's supposed to be a contender.
Yeah.
For the Cup, which for me it doesn't bode well for them in the playoffs, let alone getting into it. I think it's going to be a real problem for them getting into it. I think in the regular season it'll be okay. That's why I still have them at second.
Regular season they're going to be fine. However, I don't see how much worse Murray's performance could be than Campbell's performance post All-Star break last year.
He was fine, bro. It was literally a month and a half. Even near the end of the season, he went back to playing really good.
Yeah, he went back to playing decent by the end.
Not decent. He went back to playing really good.
But
Those numbers dropped his overall numbers way more than it should have.
They didn't even drop his overall numbers that much. He still ended with like a 9.
Bro, he had like
something.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That's how good he was, and people put all that on Campbell. Toronto's defensive play in that same range of time was worse than it was at any other point in their year.
Yeah, but I mean, man, he was not playing good.
And he wasn't either. But that's what I'm saying. It was team defense plus goaltending that was bad, not just goaltending.
Yeah, but that's always the case.
And the team defense didn't really improve in the time that he got back to playing good. It basically stayed the same.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about basically the same team with a different bottom six, which they seem to recycle. They just go through like
the bottom
of different top bottom sixes, and like maybe this one's gonna be better. We'll see, and like it's gonna be more defensive rather than all their goals coming in the top six. Like that seems to be the plan that they're going for, because they're going for a lot of guys that are like analytical gods defensively, except Wayne Simmons, who's not good at anything anymore. But
I don't know why he's still there.
Yeah. I hope that they give guys like Nick Robertson a chance in the top six rather than Kerfoot and stuff. I don't think it's going to happen, at least not early. But I think that would at least help contribute to their overall success. I think everyone knows that they're not going to finish lower than 2.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
I mean, there's nothing apart from the goaltending. There's nothing like the top 6 is going to do what they do, and they're gonna play like they played last year.
For me, Tampa's just a safer pick at 1. I think Toronto has a higher ceiling.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Like I think Toronto has a higher chance of finishing lower in the standings than Tampa does. Like I think Tampa could finish 2 and no lower. I think Toronto, I think things can go really badly, and they can finish like 5th.
If Murray really...
Yeah, if their goaltending goes, the defense doesn't hold up, like they could finish 5th, and it wouldn't surprise me that much.
Yeah, I mean, even with how bad our defense is, we're still always...
Yeah, exactly. But I'm saying more things can go wrong for them than Tampa.
I mean, it's Toronto, Tampa 1 and 2, whichever order you do, it's a safe pick. None of them are finishing below second place.
So, you had Ottawa ranked the highest.
Yep.
And as an Omar, and Sufi, you had Ottawa ranked the lowest. So why did you put Ottawa at 4 and 6 respectively? We'll start with Omar.
There you go. I got to piece my words together properly. That won't kill me.
I think they have a legitimate top 6 this year, for the first time.
That's not, we've said that so many times.
Well, they do. I mean,
that's the only thing that people talk about with Ottawa, bro.
They have a legitimate top 6, and I mean, yeah, I'm not one of those. Like, I have a friend who's like really, really excited about them, like thinking they're gonna be like really, really good. I mean, he's one of them, yeah. But like, and I was like, I remember he was messaging me about it, especially after they got Giroux, and even before that when they had traded for DeBrincat. So he was like really, really pumped about it, and I was telling him, I was like calming him down, like, okay, yeah, like, but like thinking about the team, yeah, they're not going to finish top 3 or anything, nothing like that, but I feel like I see them squeezing into the playoffs with this team. I do, because I don't think that this is the final version of the team we're seeing as well. I think we're going to see some changes throughout the year. I think especially if we go to half season and they're putting up decent, like if they're up there, if they're in the hunt, like they're going to make moves come trade deadline and
stuff.
stuff.
That's where we disagree. Because for me, this is what I think they're going with, and I don't think that they're overly committed to being like a Stanley Cup winner this year. So
not a Stanley Cup winner.
I know, but I don't think they're as averse to going for rentals and giving up picks and prospects for it as much as people may think that they are. And I know they have a lot of assets and stuff, but I don't think there's going to be anything game-changing that they can do midway through the season. Holy goodness, my stomach just went nuts.
I'm not saying anything game-changing.
But that's the thing, though. I don't think that they're one defenseman away. I think they're one really good defenseman away.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why I don't have them higher.
Okay.
If hypothetically, if they had Uyghur or Chikrin on their team, and let's say just Zaitsev was the one roster player out, or Zaitsev and Holt, something like that, would you have both put them in your top 3?
If they had Uyghur, I'd put them in my top 4. If they had Chikrin, no.
I also think the players are hungry. I think players like Stutzle, Kachuk, Norris, I think these guys are hungry for a good season.
I don't think there's going to be much difference in points, by the way. Like from 6 to 4, I think there's gonna be a lot of like going up and down.
Yeah.
And 6, like I think Ottawa could finish like, what the heck is this touchscreen?
Yes.
Sorry. I think Ottawa can finish like 2 points out of 4th and still be 6th. That's how competitive I see that division.
I think Ottawa, Detroit are going to be really close throughout. And according to my list, Boston's going to be right
but
there.
That's the major wrench that we have. Because his is, who did you have at 4 and 5?
Me?
Yeah.
I had
Boston
Sens
4?
5, Boston 4.
So that's the major difference we have is that, for me, it's like Florida is just way lower than.
Wait, where do you have Florida?
5.
Oh yeah, you put Florida all the way
Yeah,
5. That's pretty much like me putting Boston at 5.
Precisely.
Well, that's the thing. Like you said earlier, this division, other than the top 2, and I'd say probably bottom 2, like you said, 2 to 6. It's like if Ottawa finished 3rd, I wouldn't be like, holy crap, what the hell happened? Or if they finished 6th, I also wouldn't do the same. And pretty much any other team as well. If Boston missed or if Boston made it in those positions, like it is really close. I think we all have our opinions where those teams like differ. I think Detroit's really young. I think similar to Ottawa, like they each have their own like strengths and weaknesses. Like I think maybe their younger goalies are better. I think they're both defenses aren't great, but they have like one kind of go-to guy. Maybe Ottawa's top 6 has more like high-end talent, but maybe Detroit's a little more experienced and deeper on an offense. Then like Florida obviously has those top guys, but then like goaltending can be shaky. They lost a really good defender, and then Buffalo everyone always says Buffalo's getting better, but
No.
It looks like they're supposed to get better. And then Boston has people injured, and so I don't know. It'll be really interesting this upcoming season. Like this is the most excited I've been as a Sens
But like,
fan.
yeah, what I struggle with is I don't know if DJ Smith is the person that's going to take Ottawa to the promised land.
I've said that so many times.
Yeah.
I've literally said that a lot, right?
Yeah, I don't.
He's a development coach.
Yeah,
He is.
Yeah,
Like I think I said this last episode. He creates such good internal competition that everyone's competitive and plays hard regardless of where they are in the standings, which is great. But do I think that maybe when they're legitimate contenders, will they have a different coach?
I mean, I don't know if I can even
Probably.
see. I don't know if I can see them becoming legitimate contenders under him.
That's the thing, though, because like the internal competition thing, it works when guys don't have roster spots, and like you have established players now. There's no point in internal competition.
Yeah,
Really, like for your bottom 6, maybe, but that's gonna happen regardless.
and the Suns play a very Babcocky system, I guess. And I don't know. I haven't been the biggest fan of his lineup choices all the time.
Yeah, neither have I as a Sens
Yeah.
fan. I think
Yeah.
for me, why I had them where they are, and like I said, those middle 4 teams, whatever it is, or 5 teams, whatever it is, could switch so much, is, again, I truly believe that Jake Sanderson will be a very effective NHL defenseman this year. I'm not saying he's going to be Moritz Seider or anything, but I think that gives them the edge over Detroit, and I think maybe, or I'd say Buffalo as well. Boston, I don't know. Like it could go so any which way with everything that's happening there, with new old players coming back, people being injured. So
I think that's where we differ, though, because I don't see Sanderson as that until I see it. If that makes sense. Like I don't see him being a really good top 4 right away. I think that could be something that happens over the course of the season, and then midway through the season, he could be a good top 4. But even if my thought process is that even if because I have him slotted in as the left defenseman on the top 4, even if he performs adequately in that to an above average standard, I don't think that they're in the top 5 spots for me until they get another defenseman to play with him, or play with Shabbat, whoever. I also think that there's a lot of figuring out of lineups that they still have to do, like, and that can be done early in the season and things can click right away. But it's not a given. I think the only thing that you really know right now is that the line from last year has chemistry, and then after that, it's kind of anything in the your 9 forwards after that is you don't know if it's going to work or whatever, and then you don't know the status of Formanton either. I don't know, that's that big of a deal, but you have to figure out more things with your lines on the forwards as well. And then on the D-core, I think everyone is trying to figure out what is going to happen, and I think that for me, I'm just afraid that they're going to do Shabbat Zub and go for the really good pairing, which is understandable if the rest of your D-core is at least adequate, which it isn't. Like, I think Holden and Hamonic and Zaitsev are subpar NHL defensemen. I think Sanderson is already better than those guys easily, and that's why I have him in the top 4. And then it's just the problem is that Sanderson stepping into the league and playing with either Hamonic, Holden, or Zaitsev is not going to be very good for his development or the team to start off. And I think there's all that stuff to figure out. And then you have like 2 goalies that are good, not great, and they also have to fight for ice now as well, because they're both coming off good seasons, but we need to see what Talbot plays like under what I'm going to assume is not as much of a defensive system, and then we have to see if Forsberg can repeat or be anywhere near he was last year. I think there's more question marks in that regard for me. For me, Detroit's offense is a little safer in their line structure and chemistry wise. The D-core is worse in terms of like, it's not worse. I think it's similar. They just have different question marks essentially. I really don't like Ben Sherratt, so that's the only reason I don't like their D-core. But everything else is just as much question marks. And I think for me, young goalies with potential that have already played good, I would take over 2 older goalies. I don't think they're going to be far off from each other in either way, though. Like, for me, that is basically a watch. It's the only difference is age.
It's a weird comment, even though you just lost 2 young goalies and signed an older goalie for your own team.
The difference between the skill levels of those players are very different. Like, because Darcy Kemper just won the cup. I think everyone would prefer to have him on their team.
Okay, so quickly, we'll just go over... Pardon?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to say
Darcy Kemper on Toronto. Would you take that?
Darcy Kemper on Toronto? Yes.
Thank you. So quickly, Sufi, you'll just talk about why you had Florida so low, and then we'll just touch on why could Buffalo go higher than second last.
I think I talked about this last week. That was my hot take, and I'm very much staying with that. New coach, a lot of overperforming average players, mostly shaky goaltending. One of them shaky, the other one's like 21 or something. The D-core got worse. Offense overall got worse. And now they have a new coach. So I don't bode well with question marks, and they seem to have a lot of them. And they also beat us in the first round, so I have a vendetta.
And then Buffalo. So, they had... I'm assuming Owen Power is going to play the full season. They have Rasmus Dahlin, Tage Thompson, Jeff Skinner had really good seasons last year. Dylan Cousins was very impressive last year, and then maybe Jack Quinn makes a team. Could you see them getting above the second last spot, either of you?
See, I see them be... I don't know.
I could, but... I just think that the other 6 teams have less of a chance of being 7 than they do. That's my whole thing.
They could surprise and just go ahead of Boston, but
they don't really have a goalie right now. They have Craig Anderson.
That's a goalie
who seems like that's the thing though. Like,
I mean,
they have a lot of plug and play goalies.
Yeah, regardless of where we rank them, still Detroit and Ottawa are big question marks for next season, right? It's not like so we can't it's not going to be entirely surprising to me if Buffalo surprises or surprises me. It's not going to be surprising to me if they surprise me. It's not going to be entirely surprising to me if Buffalo squeezes ahead of Ottawa or Detroit, because we have our projections for them, but I mean there are huge question marks right now still.
That's
we don't
true.
know.
I think everyone's assuming that we're going to see progress when it's not necessarily a given.
Yeah.
We're also assuming regression from some teams where again it's not a given. The only thing we're kind of concrete on is that Montreal is rebuilding, and that's pretty much all we can. Which I think they know as well, except for Joel Edmondson, because he said they're going to try to make the playoffs.
Well, I think
Montreal's the only given for me in terms of I think they're going to end last. For me, Toronto first, but yeah.
Yeah, so I think that Boston, Tampa, and Toronto, and Florida, for that matter, all had a lot of points last year. I could see every single one of those teams getting less, and then it being more spread out in general. Like, I don't think it's going to be 8 teams in the East locked by Christmas,
Yeah. There's no runaway.
Yeah. All right. So now we have a head-to-head for everyone. So on the topic of something that I talked about earlier, actually, I brought up both these players. I brought up 2 young centers with similar contracts and similar points per game in their first 2 seasons. So I'm going to ask you, who would you rather, Tim Stutzle or Jack Hughes?
Oh, this is not what I wanted.
What?
I'm going Jack Hughes.
And I'll go first while you guys think. So
Just I think Sophie didn't think at all.
No, I'm sorry. Like that is. I don't think they're in the same realm.
So Jack Hughes in his second season had a I think it was like 0.56, 0.58 something points per game average, and was a smaller guy. He wasn't as dominant people maybe thought when he was picked for first overall, but then last season he had an explosion in the 49 games that he did play, and I think that it helps that Jesper Bratt was getting better as well. But Tim Stutzle in this past season had a 0.77 points per game, I believe. And, I think as they are very similar players and Stutzle had transitioned to center, I think if he played a full season at center, he could have maybe even gotten more points than that. And, yeah, I think for me, as a Sens fan, I'm going with my boy Jimmy Stu.
No. I'm just pulling up analytics because I don't know what it is on this computer.
So I'll go to you next, Omar.
Jack Hughes.
And why?
I mean, his first 2 seasons have been very much more impressive than Tim Stutzle's first 2 seasons.
His first 2?
Sorry.
21 points and 31 points? Then he had 29 and 58 in his first 2?
No, his last 2, I should say.
Yeah, I don't really care about his first year.
Yeah, his first season, whatever.
So was Stutzle last.
Yeah,
Stutzle did good in his first season too, but I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's it's that close. Is it that close?
Yeah.
Do you think it's that close?
Yeah.
I don't know. I disagree.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that close.
Hey, I'm here to defend my boy.
But what makes you think it's close?
What makes you think it's not close?
I mean, 56 points in 49 games.
Yeah, and who says Stutzle couldn't do that this upcoming season?
I'm not saying
I could say that. I'm not.
I mean, just he hasn't done it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
He hasn't done it, but
I don't think
I'm
Hughes
doing
is-
this not necessarily currently. I'm saying, who do you want on your team for the next 10 years?
Oh,
I think Hughes has the potential to become a very, very high impact offensive player, which he already is, and he is significantly better at play driving, playmaking, power play, defense, all of that stuff than Stutzle right now, and they're both very young already. So I don't really.
Is Jack Hughes younger?
They're both 21.
Both 21. Okay,
well,
Jack Hughes is a year
So
older.
for me, he's already so far ahead in his development. I think Stutzle will need to do a lot to catch up, and I think now this version of Hughes is only going to get better, and he's only in his 3rd season. So even if Stutzle does that next year, I feel like Hughes is going to keep getting better and better.
But it's only 1 year apart. Let's say in 3 years, you don't think they could be almost identical point producers?
No, I think Hughes is going to become a higher point producer next year. Like, I think it's going to be, like, even if Stutzle produces 70 points next year, I think Hughes is going to transcend his already points per game pace that he had last year. Because it's not like...
Yeah.
So you think that Jack Hughes could get 100 points next year?
I think Jack Hughes can get like 90 next year, and it wouldn't surprise me. He was insane. I don't think that it's... I think his season got overshadowed a bit by injuries, which is understandable because he is a smaller player, but I don't think that needs to be something that gets tagged to a player that early in their career. Maybe if that keeps happening for the next 5 years, you can tag Hughes as injury prone and it'd be okay. But I think that just like the skill level of Hughes is just on a different level than of Stutzle's. Like I think if I'm talking player comparisons, like I could see Hughes enter like an elite category, like a Draisaitl type category or a Kucherov type category.
Stutzle.
No, Hughes.
Oh, okay, Hughes.
I can see him entering like a Draisaitl Hughes or Draisaitl Kucherov type category, where I can see Stutzle entering more of like a consistent mid 80s to 90 point guy category, which would be like, I don't know.
But would you have said this last year after he had 31 points in 56 games?
Maybe, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
For me, really skeptical.
But for me, even if I just took their first 2 seasons, I would have said that Hughes is a better player. I don't really.
I mean, they're both. They're. I mean, Hughes' second season and Stutzle's first season, they're pretty much the same. I mean, pretty similar.
And we're talking like he came in as an 18-year-old playing on like the third line and playing like not that much ice time either. Like it wasn't like he was given ample opportunity to produce at a young age. It got progressively better, and then last year he kind of just made them play.
In my opinion, last year he took himself apart from Stutzle.
Because we're talking about a guy that had 26 goals as well in how many games was it? 49.
Yeah.
Like we're talking about like
what pace is
someone
that?
That's like someone that's pushing like late 40s goals already.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying that's going to continue because, like, the thing is, even his shooting percentage isn't like crazy. Like, he had like a 16 shooting percentage, which isn't unsustainable for a player of that caliber. Like, I think Draisaitl hovers around that as well. So, but for me, like, that's the category that I have him in, and then I have Stutzle in like just the tier below, like right below where you have like, I don't know who can I compare that to, like just someone that's like 85 to 90 points consistently in a
John
year.
Tavares.
Sure. That's fair. Tavares on the Islanders if he stayed there and everyone loved him.
Yeah.
So his like first 8 years or whatever it was.
But 80 to 90 point average. Who would be more like him?
I
looking at like
I would
a
say
Bergeron?
Goudreau. Because before this random season where he had 115, he kind of went and like fluctuated between like late 60s to like mid 80s in points, except for like a few years or a couple of years where he had 100 and the 115 last year. We could see an offensive explosion like that one season from Stutzle, and I wouldn't be surprised. But for me, Hughes is going to be that player that's like consistently in the leaderboards for points for years to come, and he's already progressed as like a better defensive player as well at 22 years or 21 years old. And if he's already done that at this age, I think that is going to bode well for him for the rest of his career.
See, for me, I think they're on very similar tracks as well. Like, I can see Stutzle this upcoming year maybe not having as many points, but just developing his game in general. Like, he's going to be better on faceoffs. He's going to be a better defensive player. He will have more points than he did last season. And so I don't think, for me, I think this is close, where it seems like you guys don't think that. And yeah, I'm the Sens fan, but I also don't think I'm being incredibly biased here. Like, I genuinely do think this is a very close matchup. Like, I think that these are both guys that excel in the center of the ice. I think they're both playmakers first, but obviously I think they both have, very impressive shots as well. So for me, I'm giving the edge to Stutzle, but I can understand your points of he could be an elite point guy, and maybe that's what he'll do. Like you said, a Kucherov, like someone who may not, look like he's trying the hardest all the time or the best defensive player or anything, but he will get his 90, 100 points.
But Hughes already is good defensively, like really good defensively. That's where he differs from Stutzle, where I don't think Stutzel's bad defensively. I don't think he's had the time to develop defensively. And to be fair, I'd be saying the same things about Hughes if he wasn't good defensively. But if he's already at least average defensively at 21 years old, that is only going to be getting better as he gets more experience as a center. And the thing with Hughes too, he hasn't subjected himself to just being like a power play point producer, where like he had 14 of his 56 points on the power play. So that's 40 even strength points in 49 games. And I don't see the Devils' power play getting that much better like next year. But if that does become like even like a mid-tier power play and Hughes starts getting in the range of like 25, 30, 35 power play points a year, we're talking about 100 to 110 point player. That's also really already good defensively, and if that gets better, then he's just in a different realm.
I mean, I'm just going to use the same thing that I had said before. Like, I think Stutzle, yes, like you had said earlier, had a lot of power play points, and that's great, and I hope that does carry over. But, again, he will get more points per game 5-on-5 this year. I will guarantee. I will Omar Toronto first place guarantee lock that. I think that, like you said, adjusting to center and only learning from guys like Giroux and probably his offseason getting faster, stronger will improve defensively. And I think, like I said, like the reason why I had this head-to-head is because I do think it is genuinely close, and over the next X amount of years, I think whether it's points are slightly off, one person may do slightly better in one category versus another. I think it's an interesting one for me personally. Like, I think both these guys may never be a top 5 player in the NHL or anything, but I think they could both easily be in the top like 15.
You see that? I think that's where we disagree, because I could see Hughes becoming a top 5 player in the NHL.
Oh, that's a hot take in my opinion.
I think Stutzle falls more into the category of Zegras and Caulfield than Hughes does. I think Zegras, Stutzle, and Caulfield are better comparisons to each other than.
This is so hard to say right now, though.
Because of how young they are, but for me, those three are easier to compare for me to each other than any of them to him.
So top 5 player.
I think eventually, yes.
Wow. You think very highly of this little boy.
And I'm not like, I don't know, maybe I'm just really gonna like using him in Hockey Ultimate Team, and that's why I want him to get to like a 93 overall. But we'll hope for the best. But for me, also the other point that I want to make is that it's easier to become a better power play point producer if you're already a good even strength point producer, and rather than the reverse. Like, I think if you're subjected mostly to the power play, and that's where a lot of your production has come from, I think it's harder to become an even strength point producer rather than the other way around.
But didn't you say earlier that, like, so Jesper Bratt, who you had on your fantasy team last year, even when Hughes was injured, kept putting up lots of points, and like he's progressed a lot. And when Stutzle had missed games or other people had missed games, his most common line mates, again, were Connor Brown, Formanton, and Adam Gaudette. He never had anyone close to Jesper Bratt who can create on his own. None of those guys create on their own ever. And now he's getting put with 2 guys who, like you said in another episode, that DeBrincat play drives a lot more than people think. More than, because people were thinking that, Patrick Kane made kind of Alex DeBrincat what he is. But Alex DeBrincat can do that himself. And then Claude Giroux, like you said earlier, probably the best passer or one of the best passers on the Sens when they have plenty of guys. You know, putting him with guys like that, I could see him getting like almost, how would I word this? Like, it's going to be astronomical, I think, the jump in 5-on-5 points per game for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair thing to predict, but I don't think it's a given. And I also think that the Hughes-Bratt thing, I think they're both individually great players. I think that putting them together isn't necessarily, like, I don't think it would really jump or decrease either of the results that much. I think Bratt also didn't produce as much without Hughes, and in terms of points, and that was evident. But when Hughes was on the ice, like, the whole team was better, even if he was playing with mediocre players, which tends to happen if with a team like New Jersey, because if Bratt gets stuck in the box or on a line change or whatever, Hughes is the one creating plays for everyone else, even if, because on New Jersey there's literally no one else.
He sure?
even Heischer is not that like Heischer's good, but he's like Heischer's like
Overrated.
He's like a second line center, and he's still not the one that's like he'll stand in front and then pot in a couple of open Jack Hughes passes, and that's pretty much what I can say about him.
All right, cool.
Yeah, that was a good debate, and thanks for everyone for listening to our podcast again. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify or YouTube, whatever it may be, we thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you on the next one.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.